Hey guys, before we start, a quick shout out to Alpha Dog Nutrition for sponsoring this podcast. Alpha Dog products are now available at dusupply.com, and you can use code ALPHADOG15 at checkout for 15% off and a credit for free shipping to try it yourself. Now let's get you to your podcast.
Welcome to my podcast, where we are going to talk about a lifestyle with dogs and threw in a few life lessons along the way. Whether you're a hound hunter, bird dog enthusiast, running setters, pointers, retrievers, or a flat-out running dog junkie, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Heath Hyatt, a certified law enforcement canine trainer with over 3 decades of personal and professional training and handling experience. It's time for me to pay it forward. So grab your leads, lace up those boots, and come and join me on this lifelong process of teaching, training, and learning. Are you looking to unlock your dog's full potential and give them the best nutrition possible for peak performance? Then look no further. Inukshuk has what you're looking for. Inukshuk's nutrient-dense formulas are crafted to keep your dog's energy high and performance top-notch. Packed with premium proteins and essential fats, Inukshuk delivers the balanced nutrition your dog needs to thrive. From hunting dogs to police canines, Inukshuk is trusted by professionals. Give your dog the power of peak performance with Inukshuk professional dog food. All right, bear season's over, and the only thing left in is yotes and cats. And I prefer not to run some yotes, even though I've come up with a brilliant idea. I've got 2 guys at work that are avid coyote hunters. They enter those competitions. He sent me a picture the other day, and I think he had 4 or 5 that they had taken for a competition. I think I'm going to get him to come with me, call in a yote, where I can actually put my dogs on it and do some trash breaking. I don't know how it's going to work out, but we're gonna try it, and then I'll let you guys know if it's worth your time or not. But maybe how's the cat hunt down your way? I know you guys are pretty heavy into that.
I've only been able to go a couple times so far, but and the weather's been kind of hit and miss. But we piddled around a little bit yesterday. Finally got after one. I think we jumped it around 12:30, and it was a pretty short race, but probably 30 minutes or so, and then we caught it. So it's been pretty good. I know Wade's been getting after him pretty consistently. So
well, that was what I was going to ask you. So are you going by yourself, or are you hunting with Wade?
Hunting with Wade. I did go one day right after the little bit of snow we had, and run one a little bit, and they made a little miss, and it squirted across the frozen swamp. So I ended up catching them off or getting them back, and plus they trashed on a couple coons that they run across in a stump in the middle of the swamp. But I didn't want them getting out there on that ice and breaking through, because the dogs were breaking through, and the cat was able to just go right on across. So, but that's the only time I've messed with them with the bear dogs, but just something to do.
So, all right, if you listen to guys across the country, and I'm going to pretty much, let's single out Maine, because if you listen to Paul, Laney, and a lot of those guys up there, they catch a lot of those cats on the ground. Is that what you see too down east, or are you seeing them treeing more?
Some of both. I mean, they'll tree, but we catch a fair amount of them on the ground too.
Just bait up.
Well, yeah. They'll bay them up and catch them.
Yeah. Well, and
so.
I mean, you've sent me some pictures over, the last couple of years, and like January, I want to come every year. I say, I'm coming. And then volleyball gets kicking off and everything else is going on right after the first of the year. It's hard to get away, but we're going to try to make that happen next month. Do you think the cats, what's the average size of a cat down there?
I think the one we caught yesterday was maybe 15, 18 pounds, but I mean, we've caught them, pushing 30. If you catch a 30-pound cat, it's a big cat for around here, but they're just kind of all different sizes. So it just really kind of depends. I got pictures of several last night, but they travel a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a bear. I would say it's even a little bit fewer of them than bears around here anyway. But they cover some ground, and some nights they move good. I think right before, from what I've seen, it seems like when right before the weather starts to hit bad, or then super cold nights, they seem to move too. I guess they're hungry, feeding, looking for something to eat. So just kind of depends. I've seen some good ones on camera, so hopefully we'll get a chance to get after them sometime coming up soon. But
yeah, I mean, I've caught several coon hunting on accident, not on purpose, but I did get one mounted. Is a female. She was 32 pounds, which
oh, good gosh.
is one of the bigger females that I've seen here for us. And like I said, I'm not pursuing them actively. You don't see a whole lot of them. You see them here and there. And of course, back when I was coon hunting, I definitely seen more. I've caught a couple bear hunting. It's been several years since we've caught one on accident. But yeah, I mean they do float around, and I mean I don't know. Like I always wonder that, going back and forth, if I cat hunt my bear dogs, I know they're going to rig and strike cats, and I'm going to have races. It's just inevitable. You can't say you don't, but I guess that's been one of the deterrents for me, is just not crossing them over. But
yeah, well, I mean, and that's why I kind of went after the snow, was to look for a track more than anything. And bear hunting, running the bear dogs on cats. So
yeah. I mean, like I said, I know I had a conversation with Kirk Rogers, and Kirk said that his dogs during the training season, if he was rigging, he would always get a race or two. But he said he could determine pretty quickly what it was. And he said, I don't get on them because I put them, I put them on them. And then, I was talking to one of my buddies out in Idaho, Casey, and Casey runs his bear. He runs his same pack on bear, and then he switches them over to mountain lion. And he said it takes them a week or so, 2 weeks, week or so, whatever, to kind of settle down where they'll get to trailing. The bear, everybody talks about, how different the odor is between the bear and a mountain lion. So I feel like if they did both, you would probably have a little bit better product on the trail side of it myself.
Oh yeah, that's why I was messing with some young dogs and just working. That's kind of what I was thinking, just something to do and run them on. And there's not so many of them, so around here where I hunt, I don't think it'll be a big deal. And they run it different too. I mean, when if you get him jumped, they make such tight circles if they get him jumped usually. That you can tell pretty quick. I mean, if they're making circles within a 50-yard, diameter, or a little bit more, 100 yards, or sometimes even tighter, sometimes 20-yard diameter, that's what the hounds just don't seem like they can make those turns as well as the running dogs.
Yeah, I get that. And I tell myself every year, our cat season stays until February 28th. I'm like, all right, from December to February 28th, I'm going to take my young dogs out. If I find a cat track, I'm going to put them on it and hopefully teach them a little bit. And then again, like, I don't know why the first of the year for me is so stinking busy. Like, it's like every other weekend we're out of town at a volleyball tournament. Basketball season's in, so we're going to those during the week. Like, it's nonstop. In my mind, this is what I'm going to do, but it never happens that way. Like, I end up, like I said, till March, till travel ball season stops. I mean, it's busy. Like, it's super busy.
Well, if you're like me, you're trying to catch up on everything that you kind of put off while you're bear hunting. So
yeah,
it's kind of hard.
I'm looking at my building up here, and I still have 7 pieces of tin to put on it. And I just said, I'm like, I should have got up there yesterday. I had to take Maddie she had to work a volleyball tournament, so I had to take her to that yesterday morning. So I went to Rural King and done some things while she was working it. And, a couple hours later, picked her up and come back. And I sat around. I was pretty lazy, actually. And now I'm like, I could have probably got that roof completely on that building, but it's muddy. Like all the snow's melted off. Like when you walk outside, the yard's just like a slush pit. Just, and I just avoided it because it's all dirt where I dug it up to flatten it out. So I haven't got gravel in there yet. So I avoided it because of that. And I wished I'd have just went ahead and done it.
Yeah. Now I'm right there with you on my barn. So I'm in the same boat to a degree.
Oh, no, yours is way further along than mine. I'd give anything to have that monstrosity of the thing down here. I'd be in heaven. I don't even have enough piece. I don't have a big enough piece of land to put that thing. My problem.
Yeah. No, it'll be nice when it gets done, but we still got a long way to go to get there. So
yeah. All right. So you brought up a topic. Actually, there's two topics here we're going to touch that you have brought up. And I think it's some things that we all think about. Maybe we just don't discuss them openly. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. So the first topic is hounds versus the houndsman. So dive into that, BB, and tell me what the conversation was, what the thought was, and then let's just kind of open that book and see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I was just, me and a buddy of mine were talking, me and Braden were talking here, I don't know, a night or two ago, and, talking about how, I think that a lot of people, and don't get me wrong, the dogs deserve the credit, but I think, that really the credit comes down to the houndsman, handling the dogs, because if you're not putting that dog where a game is, or you can't read that dog as a houndsman to kind of help steer that hound along to be successful, then I think that that's something that's often overlooked. And don't get me wrong, there are good dogs and they stand out, but a lot of times, what I would consider a good dog, a lot of people might not ever seen that type of dog before, and I think that's the case. Like I said, I've said it before. Doug's always said it. Kind of where I got it from is I don't think many people have ever seen a truly good dog work. And then usually when they do, they recognize it. But I really think that you take a good houndsman and they can make some mediocre dogs. They can be successful with mediocre dogs too. But I think that good houndsman also creates that excellent hound too. And don't get me wrong, there are some that it's bred in them and they're going to be that top-notch hound, regardless, other than if it sits in a kennel, so they definitely got to be hunted to progress as far as making a top hound. But that's just kind of what I was thinking. It's one of those things where I think a lot of people say, "Oh, that's a good dog," but I think sometimes I think it's more credit given to the dog and the relationship than to the houndsman. I guess this is kind of how I was looking at it.
Well,
I was thinking about a ratio, and it's like, really, I think the houndsman has probably a 70%, 60 to 70% of the success rate factor versus the 30 or 40 that the hound has. Don't get me wrong, they got to run and catch it, whatever you're after. But sometimes finding it is half the battle too.
So let's back up just a little bit further, and actually tell everybody where this stemmed from. So, our friend George made a post about dogs backtracking, and there was a lot of comments on it. And I don't even know where I stand with it because I don't have the trail dogs like I used to. I just don't. I'm trying to get back to that, but when I had my trail dogs, Frosty and Bale and Ring would take a bad track and make it sound like a good track. And I can't tell you the times that people pack dogs to him or put dogs with him and they just couldn't do nothing with it. And he sounded like he was running and he wasn't. But anyway, I never really dealt with a lot of backtracking. I've had my dogs do it maybe 100, 200 yards and they'll turn it and come right back with it. I see the worst backtracking on red hot game. Like when people dump them off the tailgate and they don't get them started right and boom, they run that thing all the way back to where it was born. But in the trail scenario, I don't have a lot of experience with that. Like, I've not had that happen. It happens. I'm not saying it don't happen. I'm saying, but it's not been on a regular basis with the dogs that I have. And I'm not saying they're perfect by no means, because Lord have mercy, they're not. But that's the conversation that started this. And you and Braden had the conversation about, knowing your dogs. And I think George or somebody else posted that in a comment there, that, you got to know your dogs and what they're doing, and understand that, okay, well, I need to turn them around and get them back this way. Or recognizing, just like what Braden said, is, most people would have probably just let them go for half a mile or a mile. They petered out and they just kept on going hunting, instead of giving the dogs another opportunity by bringing them back to that original start point and making that circle in there to try to find out the track going the right direction, which in turns is what you and I are getting ready to talk about, is, the houndsman actually making a better product because of his knowledge and skills in the woods.
Yeah. I mean, it was a perfect example of that yesterday. I mean, we hunted and the dogs trailed and trailed and trailed different places all around, and the bobcats are a little different. I mean, they're kind of like a bear, and they like the same type of ground, but, we didn't jump that cat until 12:30. And a lot of people, if they just trailed around all day and hadn't come up with or jumped nothing, they would pack up and go home for the day. So, it's a matter of just kind of grinding it out, I guess you could say, to try and figure out the process of elimination. Sometimes you have to do to where they're land. It's a little different here, just because you can kind of pick the ground, and well, if you hunted over here and didn't jump it over here, then, if he's across the hardtop or across the road, or there's a little thicket over here, you're trying to, well, that's how I am. I'm trying to think of, okay, where would he be going and where would he be laying? And then trying to work from that, and then trying to, place your hounds in that situation or the location where they can hit it off again, and go jump that whatever game you're after.
And baby, I will say that, being down there and hunting with you guys now for 3 years, like, I see you guys doing that more than what we do here. And I was just sitting here kind of thinking about it. Is it because our terrain, and it's so hard to get into point A to point B? And is that why we don't put as much effort as you guys do? Because you'll find tracks or have a picture of a bear in a block, and you hunt that block out and it's not there. Well, then all of a sudden you guys are expanding. You're going to this block and that block. And then if that don't happen, then we're going back and checking these two. So I can vouch for what you guys are doing. I see it. And I know here that, I'm lazy, and like, if it gets to be around lunchtime, I don't spend a whole lot more time, 5 miles deep in the woods poking around. Usually by lunch or thereafter, I'm headed out. And I don't know why. Like, at one point in my hunting career, I was desperate. And we're going to go back 20 years when you couldn't catch a bear. I remember, in fact, I'll tell that story later on, but I remember actually turning loose on bear tracks at 3 and 4 o'clock in the evening, because I was so desperate to run a bear. Like, you better get it while you can, because it's not here. So, over the years, with the amount of bear and the population, it's kind of made me lazy. And like I said, I don't like at my age, especially, I'm not foraging around in the mountains in all those rock bars and timber cuts and stuff after dark. I don't know. It's just not enjoyable to me. And I guess I look at the fact of getting hurt more than I used to, because of my age and experience. But, yeah, after 1 o'clock, man, this old boy's headed to the truck. Plus it's lunchtime. I might have missed lunch, and, fat can't operate without their food. But you guys do that a little different.
Most of the folks that come with us, you better eat breakfast, because you don't know if you're going to eat lunch or have time or have something packed with you, because you just never know. And I mean, you have days you think it's going to be quick, and then you end up, going till dark, and you eat breakfast. You better eat breakfast if you come on with us.
Well, you and I always stop at the duck through and get biscuits and burritos. I packed a bunch of protein stuff with me this time. I'm like, I ain't going that. Well, that one day that we had those three, it was almost dark getting out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And if we had, if I hadn't eat a biscuit and a whatever I had, a biscuit and a burrito, and I had, some snacks with me, like it'd been all day without eating.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That happens a lot. It's, I don't know. That's just kind of, my perspective on it. It's, I think a lot when it comes to it, and Doug will tell you he's thinking a lot. When he's hunting, he's thinking about where he would be traveling, where he would be laying, what he might be feeding on if we're not starting off a bait or something like that, or even if there is a bait. Sometimes they'll just come and pick around, and then they're wander through, whatever natural food is around, and you got to trail them or look a little bit harder to get after them. But I kind of look at when I go up to Maine, I kind of do the same thing. The terrain's more vast up there than what it is here, but I'm still looking. Well, that's a good place for one to be laying in, and that's where the maps and everything come into. I kind of study those, satellite imagery maps pretty hard and where I'm hunting, just so that way I can get a lay of the land from that aerial view, especially if I'm not familiar with it. If we're traveling to a club or some private property that I've never hunted, trying to figure out the ground. I'll do that sometimes the night before too. If I know where we're going, I'll look and try and get an idea of the lay of the land and see where I think that one might be laying. Because a lot of times where we're going, people don't know. They've never bear hunted before. They might see them in the summertime. I don't know how many times we've gone to places and they said, "Oh yeah, there's a ton of bears here," and then you start talking to them during hunting season when they're running deer dogs and they hadn't seen a bear. So they were there when the food was there and the crops were in the field, but they're not there now. They've done moved on somewhere else where there is some kind of food or better land ground. So it's, I try not to waste my time. If I can do a little bit of advanced scouting, I guess you could say, or electronic scouting, I try to do that if I can.
Yeah. Let's actually back up a little bit and talk more about the hound itself. And I don't think there's any argument that genetics are a huge factor, that if without the right genetics, no matter what you do, you're not going to make a dog trail run, bay, tree. If the genetics aren't there, so we're not arguing that fact. We're not even it has to be there. But I do know that, and I've talked about it on the podcast before with several people, it's easy to take a natural dog, and I think you was just kind of referencing that a minute ago, that all you have to do is give him opportunity. Just put him in the woods, and the dog's got all the tools that he needs. He just needs opportunity. There's really no training to those dogs. It's just turn them loose, give them opportunity, get them on the right game, right species, and they do the rest. And I've had a couple of those, and they make you look really good because that's when everybody's like, "Oh man, that's a nice dog." Well, I didn't do anything but turn it loose. Literally, I fed it, take care of it, and turned it loose, and it does everything else. But I go back to a lot of my canine training. We get, let me just kind of make a short breakdown for you. Most of our dogs are imported, so we have to go to Europe to get our dogs. And when you go over there, they're breeding dogs. Those guys are picking out tops 1, 2, and 3. So you're getting the middle of the pack or worse when you get them over here. And if they do any testing on the dog, which we call it a green dog, which means the dog it has a decent prey drive and a hunt drive, and then whatever else you're looking for. I'm just going to kind of reference those two. I know that we have got some dogs that we needed to work on in some of those aspects. We needed to work on the prey drive a little bit, or we needed to work on the hunt a little bit. And I think about our hounds. I see a lot of comments and a lot of people saying, well, he's either got it or it doesn't. Agreed. I'm with you. But a good houndsman, like you said, BB, a good houndsman can take an average dog and make him look really, really good. Now, it's hard to take a below average dog and make him anything. But, I can take an average police dog, and I can, with the right amount of work and the right training, and the right diagnosis on what I need to do with him, like I can make him look really, really good. The chances of me making him a superstar are slim to none. Not saying it can't happen, because it can, but it's not as frequent. But that dog would definitely be serviceable. That dog will work. He'll do his thing. He'll do what you're asking him to do. Even if he does have a shortcoming or two, like I'm able to tweak that and adjust it with the right type of training. So when I roll that into the hound world, I feel the same way. Like if the dog has, those genetics to hunt, to trail, to tree, and most of our dogs do, because we wouldn't be hunting them if they weren't, right? Like if they don't do those things, if a dog just stood at your feet and didn't do anything, we wouldn't be carrying them around.
Mm-hmm.
But I know with some of the foundation work that I do with my dogs that, like, I can tell at a young age which dogs are the more natural. And I mean, this is just common sense. We're not talking about anything that everybody don't know. I can tell, but I will say that, the last several litters that I've kept, we've kept them up to 6 months old. And I'm telling you, from that 3 month to that 6 months old, there's a lot of change in those puppies. I mean, the ones that you're putting your hands on at 10 and 12 weeks old, like, I want that one, most of the time are not the ones that at 6 months old you're going, maybe I better look over here and get that. But anyway, what's your thoughts on that? What's your thoughts on, us as handlers, houndsmen, bringing those average and mediocre dogs up to a standard?
Well, I think it's, I don't know. I would say those average and mediocre dogs might not look like average or mediocre dogs in the right hands, if that makes sense. And I don't know that it makes the dog any better, but I think that if you know how to handle, say, that type of dog and kind of understand and know that dog, then as the houndsman, you can make, and I'm more or less referencing a pack of dogs, because you got your better ones and your trail dogs or your superstars, I guess, or what you consider your better dogs, and then your more or less pack dogs and a pack of dogs. But you can take that whole pack of dogs and be successful as a houndsman and make them look good, just by grinding out sometimes, or just knowing the dogs. And that's what I mean, as far as, because I mean, we all know stories or have stories of people getting dogs from somebody, and they've seen them do really, really well hunting, maybe even been hunting with them and seen them do good. But then that person who gets that dog doesn't do the same for them, because they don't know the dog. They don't know how to handle the dog. They don't know what that bark means or this bark means. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. And a lot of times it just takes time to learn it. But I've seen some people that they never learn it. They can't read a dog, and that's, I guess, the difference. I think, that's where I think that relationship is definitely more on the houndsman end than the hound. So you take a good dog with a good houndsman, and it's gonna, things usually kind of look like clockwork. I mean, that's the goal of it, is for them to perform like that. And some people might pick up on that, and some people never understand that are going with you. I pay attention to it. I try to, anyway.
I've had several people tell me that I make it look easy, and it's not. Like, it's not easy. It's a lot of work, sweat, kicking tires, standing on top of the mountain, hollering at dogs. Like, it's not easy. But knowing how to utilize those dogs within a pack is very important. And, like, I have my pack structure. Like, I've got my couple main dogs, and everybody else does good, but my pack's nowhere near where I want it. I've got one dog that, if you have them and another dog together, like, money, like, looks like $1 million. But when you separate separate them, and they have to do it on their own. She does everything really well unless the bear stops or turns. And it drives me batty. Like, I mean, 95% of the time, very, very dependable. Very dependable. And then, like I said, you get that 1 bear, 2 bear, whatever a season, and then you see that happen. And, so here's another thing. They've been by themselves enough that I've been able to see this behavior. So if they were never by themselves, you'd never know this. Like you never know it. And I think it would shock you too, which one it is, because, I think it would shock you. But like I said, they'll run by themselves, they'll strike, they'll rig, they'll take a track, they'll do all the things. And if the bear runs in trees, never misses a lick. I mean, like I said, money, money, money. But if that bear stops and they're by themselves, then they're going to turn around and they're going to wait on the other dogs to come and help. I mean, it's very aggravating, because my ideal of a dog, they need to do it all. But I understand within my pack that I've got dogs that's got certain things they do really well and certain things they don't do well. But back to the original statement I made is knowing how to utilize those dogs in the pack. Like, I've got to put X with Y, because if I don't put those two together, then this is what's going to happen. Or I need to put C with D, because if I don't have this, one of them's good at this and one of them's good at that, and then I come up with a finished product. So I think that's what, kind of what you're alluding to is, you've got to know those dogs. And, BB, I preach it all the time. If you don't hunt them by yourself and them by themselves, you're never going to know these things.
Yeah. I mean, I have to go through the same process too, because when I go to Maine, I'll carry enough dogs to have 2 packs of dogs so I can alternate dogs every day. So then I have to figure out who I'm going to hunt with who during those days. And usually I use the summertime to try and test that out, with the who works well with who, and kind of understand the dogs and strengths and weaknesses, and then putting those together and then putting a pack together on who I'm going to run together, as a pack. So, I have to do that every time I go to Maine every year, figure out, and it changes because, if you get a dog hurt or something like that, then you got to figure out, okay, well, this dog was good here. What do I need to take today, since that dog can't go, to kind of fill that hole, I guess. And so I think my thought is I don't think that the credit goes to the houndsmen for the good hounds, I guess you could say, is I think a lot of people say, well, that's a good dog, but I don't think that the people step back and look at what gave that dog or who gave that dog the opportunity, and who's handling that dog and who's making it look streamlined and seamless when you go hunting, to catch whatever game you're after. So, I mean, that was just my thought. I think that, and don't get me wrong, there's a lot of people who do realize that, and they see it. I mean, that's why I like hunting with different folks and different people, because everybody hunts so different. You can kind of pick up things that you like, how they do this or vice versa. And that always interests me. But yeah, I mean, that's just, kind of my thought process.
Well, I've always said that it doesn't take a whole lot of training for a natural dog. It's the ones that are not natural. And, I'm sitting here telling you some of the holes in my pack. It's hard to come up with 6 or 7 dogs that are 100%. Like if you guys got that figured out, please let me know, because I'm definitely interested. But, I've got a couple that do everything that I want them to do. Well, let me rephrase that. I've got a couple that can consistently catch bear by themselves. That doesn't mean that they're phenomenal trail dogs, because they're not. That doesn't mean that, they're the grittiest things, because they're not. But they run, they catch, and they stay. So that's 3 of the things that I look for. And like I said, I've got 3 or 4 that, I can put any 2 of them together and go catch bear. But I'll promise you that those two together are a complementing team to finish the product, because they both got some holes in them that I'm compensating for, and that's from the structure. So
yeah, I mean, and you even look. I mean, look, if if for me, for example, we're talking about dogs, and I try to breed dogs that are a little bit on that easier starting side. They naturally like a bear, and it just makes things so much easier. And I try to do a process of elimination here, and take them pups and pretty early, and see which ones actually will like a bear, or whatever. And it makes a difference. And I we're lucky here is because we have the folks that deer hunt. So if I have a dog that, if I have two or three that are doing really good or really like a bear, then I'll pick them too, and then kind of move forward, and then give the other ones to a deer hunter or something like that. They can run on deer. So, I kind of start all my young dogs that way, and pick and choose. And I usually keep probably more puppies than I should, but that's just seems to be what has worked out good for me. And then too, what I'm breeding, getting them in the hands of people that bear hunt, and that I know hunt hard. That they seem to start pretty natural, and I think that goes, like, again, back to the houndsman, making those crosses that do have the light, or really like a bear. I mean, that's what I look for, is crosses and pups. Trying to breed crosses that them pups really like a bear, because if they don't like a bear, there's only so much you're going to be able to do with them, if anything at all.
Yeah, and it usually doesn't take a long time to figure that out. I mean, and again, that's what I'm saying. Not every dog's cut out for it. Not every litter is gonna be 100%, if 50%. I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into that, but yeah. So I'm with you. I feel like with the proper handling, you could make a pack or a dog look a whole lot better than it is, because I mean, I can manipulate mine, and like I said, I can put these two together and they look like $1 million, and I can separate those two and put them single or switch out dogs, and it's not the same result. So yeah, I think the handler should probably get a lot more credit than they deserve. Like I said, there's, and that's something else. You travel around like you do, and like, I get to, it doesn't take long when you're with a different group or in a different area to figure out who's doing what.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it kind of, like you said, it kind of stands out, or it catches your eye, and then you're kind of watching to see, okay, well, what's going on here? What's going on there? And then, like I said, you may take a few of those things. I always say it's like a buffet. You take a few of those things and start incorporating it, or vice versa. And it just makes the whole process better and easier.
Oh yeah. I mean, anytime you see any different styles of how people hunt, and then too, when you're, when I travel somewhere and I'm hunting with somebody, I kind of know what I need to do to be successful with my dog. So, given that opportunity, I usually do it, just kind of do it to my, do it, whatever I need to do to be successful. I don't really pay much attention to the other folks. I mean, I do, but I don't, as far as when it comes to handling the dogs. I mean, even it comes to trailing, to packing a bear, I know how my dogs usually, or how they usually handle it and do in those instances. So then I just, act accordingly, based on whatever scenario is occurring at the time, so it's just, it's kind of different. I mean, like I said, I think that a lot of people, it seems to me like they talk about the dogs and they don't talk about the hunter, or, the hunter doesn't necessarily get the credit that the pack of dogs gets a lot of times. And don't get me wrong, I think that that's the whole goal, is to, I want a good pack, a nice pack of dogs, and I want them to do good and, leave an impression. But at the same time, too, I think that people focus on the dogs and don't focus on who's handling them. I think that goes a long ways, and you can see it's real evident, I think, when you see somebody who gets a dog from somebody, and if you've ever hunted with that dog and seen that dog perform, and then you see how they perform when another person's handling it, it really stands out. Then that's when I've seen it the most. And sometimes it's a learning curve, and then, like I said, sometimes some people just they don't have it. They just don't have the instinct to be able to pick up and handle that dog to where they're the most effective. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different type of topic, but it's something I think about. I usually try and think about the handling of the dogs, because I mean, if I'm trying a dog from somebody or hunting a dog from somebody that I got from somebody, it takes me a little bit of time to learn that dog, and then I'll ask questions on purpose to whoever I'm getting it from, or on handling that dog, to try and be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's roll into our part 1 of our controversial series, because this come from you too, and you just kind of hit on it there about hunting different places, different style of dogs. So this topic come up while this fall, BB and I was talking, and actually TJ had brought it up, and this is something that I could see a lot of different opinions in this. So I'm just going to preface this. Like, I'm going to preface this in every series that I do. I'm going to try to do 4 parts. That a dog is only worth what the person is willing to pay for it. Okay? But the conversation come up is, buying dogs out from west and bringing them east and going west. And that was kind of the original conversation. And then we just got to talking about the cost of dogs in general. And I would kind of like it to, stay in general, because I've bought several dogs from out west. I've bought them from California, Idaho, Montana, Arizona, Colorado, Arkansas, which is not out west, but it's west of us. I bought dogs from a lot of different states, and I've had a couple that were exactly what the people told me they were. And then the rest of them, the majority of them, just didn't pan out. So we got to decide if that's an environmental thing, from going from different environments. Of course, Arizona and southern Colorado is a lot different than the hills in Virginia and the humidity. But the cost of a dog, and we're going to talk strictly about big game dogs. We're not going to go into the coonhound world. And these guys paying, I seen somebody post the other day, somebody paid $75,000 for a hound. Holy tamale. Like, I could retire, buy a boat and a truck for that. Like, I have no interest in paying that for a dog. But anyway, so that's what the conversation was. And we're just going to kind of give you our thoughts on it. And like I said, I'm going to have a couple. I've got some other people lined up here, and everybody's kind of on the same page, but with a little bit different twist to it. So, BB, let's have your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I've hunted with some dogs from out west that were bought for what I would consider a fair, a good chunk of change. More value than what I see most dogs around and say on the East Coast bought for. And they just, the one, I haven't been impressed yet. And I'm not saying that they're not out there. I've heard stories of them being out there and doing it. But I just don't know. I think that, the value of a dog here is definitely different than what it is out west. If you look at the auction that goes on in like New Mexico, some of them dogs, I think $15,000-$17,000 for some of those dogs. And don't get me wrong, they're line dogs, and maybe there's a difference, but I mean, and some of them are bear dogs. but at the same time, it just seems like out west the value is, you might as well multiply it by some denomination compared to what it is here. I don't know if it's by 5 or 3 or what, when you're talking price, but it just seems like I've tried them from out there, and I don't know if I'm just picky about what I hunt and like, and that's one of the reasons I raise so many puppies, is because it's hard to find anything to buy. But I would definitely say that there is a price difference when it comes from east versus west, and vice versa. And I don't know what that comes down to as far as traits, and I don't know if the environmental traits or the environmental aspects has too much to do with the traits. But to me, I just can't imagine a dog from out west that's a bear dog that's supposed to be a proven dog. And maybe it's because we can't go and go necessarily go hunting with them. You're shipping them in a lot of times and then trying them. But I just can't believe that sometimes these dogs from out west that are bear dogs won't bark at a bear, East Coast bear. And I've seen that happen before. So yeah, I don't know how deep you want to go as far as into the prices of things, but I don't know. That's just kind of what I've seen in my experience so far.
Well, let's set a bar. So you're going to, and you're right. I mean, some of those dogs in the auction are going way, I mean, $17,000-$20,000. I think last year they even got more than that for one. And again, it's only worth what you're willing to pay for it. So somebody's willing to pay that type of money for a dog. And, that's fine if they think that's the worth of it. Here's one of the big issue. And like I said, the dogs that I've bought from out west, like I said, I've had 2 that turned out really well. They did exactly what they were supposed to do. And, the other ones are, again, mediocre. And let me just, continue to say that, I used them for a season or so, maybe 2 seasons, and they weren't what I wanted. So, that was that. The 2 dogs that did really well, I ended up selling one of them because he was castrated. I couldn't do anything with him. And some of my buddies needed a dog, and he was a nice, solid dog. So I sold him to them. And the other one I kept until he passed away. But, like, you're going to pay this type of money, 6, 8, 10,000, whatever it is, 10, 12, 15, whatever it may be, to an animal that you have to accept the fact every time you turn that dog loose on big game, there is a chance you may not ever see that dog again. So the risk versus reward is one of the things that I look at. Like, am I going to pay, $6 or $8 grand for a dog that, like, I turn it loose and it gets, something happens and then I've just lost that type of money? I don't have that type of money to take that type of risk with. That's not for me. That's not something I can do. And then I go back to my law enforcement, my canine training. I know what we pay for dogs. First, they're imported. You add an extra $2,500 to $3,000 on a dog that's imported because of the cost alone, just to shipping. Like, that's that. Nothing else, just shipping. So for me, and I always feel like I have sold, and I don't sell many dogs, guys. I just don't. I never advertise them much. I have a few in the past, but I just don't advertise them much. It's usually by word of mouth. People know me, know the dog, and I let them go that way. But, like, for me, I always feel like I've sold them cheaper than I should have. And I know you and I've talked about that. Like, for me, when you get in that $4,000 to $6,000 range, you're tapping out for my budget. Like, for me, and that dog at $4,000 to $6,000 better be, like, from truck to tree. And I don't mean, I see all these posts and these ads, truck to tree dog. Like, it better be able to rig or trail, depending on what the purpose I'm buying it for. Let's just say trail. It needs to be able to trail, jump, catch, and tree a bear by itself at that price. By itself. No help. Like, no help. And I feel like for me, I've raised a lot of pups here lately. They're super expensive. Especially if you're keeping them up to like 6 months old, like I've been doing. I've got over $1,000 in each pup before I ever let it go, and I've been giving them away. Like I'm taking a huge loss. But if you do the foundation work like I'm doing, I'm teaching the dogs to load and to come here and doing these certain things with them, and that's my time is valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just told you earlier in the podcast, everybody's busy, life, work, kids, family obligations, like all that stuff takes time. And I'm taking time out of that to do some foundation training. So my time it's not negotiable, right? Like it's non-negotiable. So I don't know. For me, I have never personally sold a dog over $4,500 ever. And I mean, when I sell you that dog at $4,500, it's going to catch a bear by itself or a coon or whatever it was at the time. Like, and that's been a long time since I've done that. I just don't do it anymore. So for me, my range is 4,000 to 6,000. 6,000, like it's going to have to be something I've hunted with. I've seen it. It's going to have to be special for me. And again, a lot of that's on budget. A started dog that makes races and is treeing and is on his way. I put him in that 1,500 to 2,000 range, but that's me. 2,500 somewhere in there. Like that's my price range. And I think a lot, I had this conversation with another guest that we're going to have on. Like a lot of times, people have drove these prices up, and people have bought dog A from this bloodline because of the name or the reputation or whatever it may be, and they've asked a little bit more for it, maybe because they really didn't want to sell the dog, or that's what they got going, so they've asked a little bit more for it. So now all of a sudden you've got a $5,000 dog or an $8,000 dog, and if I price a dog over that to you, I don't want to sell the dog, and that's why I'm pricing him so you won't buy him.
Yeah.
But me personally, I just don't price them because they're not for sale. But that's me. I rambled on that. That's just my take on it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the same way. If I got one I don't want to sell or something like that, then I'd price them. That I wouldn't price them, or it'd be so high that I'd probably scratch my head if somebody actually pulled out that type of money for that type of dog. But a lot of times that's pretty rare, or at least what I've run into. I think that here on the East Coast we have a little bit higher hound population, I guess, so there's a little bit more to choose from. So I think price goes down, and maybe that's the difference from out west, is that price is up because there's not as many hounds. But at the same time, I tell you, finding a dog like you described in that $4,000 to $6,000 range, even available to buy, is difficult. I mean, usually those type of dogs aren't advertised. It's word of mouth. Somebody that might sell it for this price, and that's how it goes. Usually, it's all word of mouth, and you've hunted with the dog or something like that, and you've seen enough out of it that you're willing to pay that for it. But I'm like you, and when it comes to valuing a dog, I'm always looking. For me, I like breeding and raising pups, so I'm looking for a dog. To me, the value increases if I can incorporate that dog into my breedings, down the road, and better the pack that I have just in the puppies that I produce. So to me, that's probably the biggest aspect of it is is it a good dog? But then two, can I then incorporate that into my bloodline that I have here at the house? And that's a huge thing, because if you're getting a dog that's fixed, to me, it doesn't have nowhere near the value. Don't get me wrong, it could be a superior dog, but it kind of takes away my interest from it, because the whole reason that I want that type of dog is so that way I can incorporate into what I have and make what I have better. That's what I'm usually looking for. If I'm looking for a dog, is looking to improve what I have and in the bloodline moving forward. So that's kind of how I look at it. I look at it a little bit more into, I'm a little bit probably heavier in the value and the breeding aspect of it than I am the what that dog is at that given time. Don't get me wrong. I want it, if I'm paying that kind of money, I want it to be a good dog, but at the same time, I want to be able to incorporate it into my bloodline. So, I mean, that's kind of how I look at it. And the thing is it's kind of a gamble because I don't know if it's something that I've hunted with some of that blood before, and then I know how that blood crosses with some of the same blood that I have. It makes you feel a little more confident in buying that type of dog. But then sometimes you got to take a shot in the dark and then hope that the two bloodlines complement each other in the pups that you're going to have. It's kind of where I'm sitting right now. I bought a male. And the reason I bought him is because I liked him. I saw him go, and I liked him, and I wanted to incorporate him into the bloodline that I had. He had a good mouth, good speed, liked the bear, was young. And so hopefully I'll have some puppies here coming up soon and be able to tell you probably this time next year whether it worked or not, and then how we go from there. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, the last two dogs that I have bought, I paid more than I cared to pay for them, but at that point, were serving a purpose for me. I needed them to help me train my young dogs. One of the dogs I kept until he passed away. The other one, I ended up, using it for a couple of years, and ended up, selling it to a friend that needed it for the same purpose. So, I think that's a part of it too. Is like what is your needs? What are you willing to do, or what do you need to do, and then what are you willing to pay for that? Like it was at the top of my budget line for sure. Like I don't go no more than that.
Yeah, I mean it's necessity. Sometimes if you don't, when it comes to a trail dog, if you can't jump him, you'll be putting in a lot of miles trying to walk something up, and and plus too, if you don't have a trail dog or something like that, which is usually something that brings a little bit more value to the table, that's one of the things where, I look at it too as something to train, something to train your younger dogs to, or maybe you can get whatever else you have to a certain point. So, yeah, it's definitely sometimes a necessity evaluation that goes into that thought process. But sometimes, and I've even thought about it. I've heard about it, and there's, from what I understand, there is some insurance that you can get on those dogs. If you pay it, if you got, and I don't know what it is a year, and I think it's based on the value. And I don't know if you have to, show a receipt or something like that nature to get the insurance on it at a certain value, or if it's one of those situations where you value this dog at this price and then you pay this much of a premium for the year. But I do think that that's something that is out there now. I don't know anybody that personally has it, but I have heard of it before.
Yeah. No, there are a couple of those, because a couple of times I went to the vet and they've asked me, do you have insurance? Which I don't, but maybe that's something that we should all look into, especially if you're buying a high dollar, if you have a really high dollar dog or buying a high dollar dog.
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's a difference too in like loss insurance versus like a healthcare pet or vet healthcare insurance too. I think it's two separate things. So to think about. I mean, I know that there's some vets around that have certain programs that you can be in as a bear hunter that it's kind of like an insurance, but it's not really insurance. It's more just gives you a little bit of perks. And then if you have a big operation, something like that, it helps out with that. But, that's another aspect to an expense, that, and then having a vet available when you need it is another hard thing to come by when it comes to a dog, and a dog that's, a valuable asset to say the least. So it's not the easiest thing to find for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, let's wrap this up on the cost. Like, I believe everybody's probably paid more for a dog than they probably wanted to. Again, I always go back to it's what you're willing to pay for a dog. Um, I think when you buy a dog from coast to coast, I really think the environment and hunting style and technique play a really important factor whether that dog is going to suit you or not. I truly believe that because, I mean, just the difference between, it's 5 hours to your place. From where I'm at to your place, my dogs act different. They do different. And I mean, I'm not afraid. They don't look as good there as they normally do here. But again, I'm in my environment. This is how they've been trained. They've been raised here. This is what they do. So I believe all those play into factors when you're looking at a purchase of a dog. And when you buy a dog from a different area and it doesn't suit you, I think you have to go back to that thought process.
yeah, and I think there's definitely a time frame of allowing a dog to get accustomed to, say, a new environment. But I think that if you hunt that dog hard for 2 months after you get it, say, from a new environment, I think, and then you still don't have the results that you have, I think that's a fair assessment. I've heard of people hunting them for a year and it taking a year for them to come around. But at that point, I look at it as, have you then trained that dog, or was that dog really what it was supposed to be when you got it? That would be my question. And I think that I'd be interested to see. I think that the East Coast is. I think there's a lot of people from the West Coast that don't give the credit to the dogs. There's some of the dogs, the availability of dogs here on the East Coast, because I have a feeling that there are some dogs that would perform very well out west, and they're not willing to. They're kind of stuck in and everybody's kind of line blind, can be line blind to a degree, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of traits and things that are here that would do well there, and vice versa. And just in how the dogs do. But I do think that there are some. I think the West Coast doesn't necessarily look at the East Coast dogs as desirable, and I think that that's probably in some aspects a missed opportunity for them. But that's just, and I'm just speaking from just my thought process. But that's just kind of one of the things that I've thought about when talking about that, value, and then, like I said, I always think about the breedings and then incorporating into a bloodline. I definitely think that there's a lot more dog population here on the East Coast than out west, and I'm sure there are people that are, experimenting with that and seeing how it works and if it doesn't work. So, just one of my thoughts.
Well, I mean, I want to hit on a couple things there before we get off here, but like, pretty much every state up and down the East Coast you can hunt hounds. West Coast is not that way. You got Oregon and Washington, you got California that have cut out certain types of hound hunting, not all. And then you look at, what Arizona's going through right now, Colorado, Idaho, Montana. So, you just kind of look at those states and how spread out it is, for one. And, I think that is a good point, that there probably are a lot more dogs on the East Coast than there is on the West Coast, for one. And, then you incorporate, look at just the cost of living out there, just look at California itself. Like, the cost of living, I think I seen something the other day, is $29,000 higher, almost $30,000 higher than it is in other states. And then, okay, well, I want to sell a dog here. Well, you take a $1,500 dog and incorporate the cost of living in that, you got to sell for $5,000 just to make sure that you're not, going in the hole. So there are a lot of variables that go into it.
Oh, yeah,
for sure. And I'm not saying that the dogs are any better, any worse. That's not what this conversation's about. It's just, why does the cost out west seem to be higher than the cost back east. And not saying that some guys don't sell dogs for a higher cost, because they do, but you don't see it in the entirety here.
Yeah.
Like I said, you can, I don't know. I mean, you can go around and, $3,000 or $4,000 have you a pretty darn decent dog. Now, I'm not going to say that it's going to be a top notch dog. I'm not saying any of that, but for that type of money, you can have a decent dog that's going to help you and do what you want to do. So, yeah, I think it's a great conversation, and I'm really excited to get some of the other guys on and pick their brain and see what their thoughts are. Like I said, I've talked to the next guy we're having on already, and he feels a lot like we do. He feels like they're overpriced sometimes for what we're asking, but people willing to pay that. So, where's the balance or the compromise, and is the risk versus the reward?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard, just talking to some of my buddies or one of my buddies that's gotten, and he's bought some dogs for me, but it's like, well, what you paid here, how does it compare to what you think that same dog would be valued out west? And he would double or triple the value that he paid here, or sometimes more than what he would value or what he would see as a price from out west. And he's bought a lot of dogs from out west. So just kind of give you a perspective as far as that multiplier and the difference there. And then too, the expectations, my expectations of if I were to buy something from out there at a certain price, I would have pretty high expectations. And, but I don't know. It's just something to think about. Kind of a fun conversation.
Yeah. Well, baby, I appreciate your time, and I think we'll probably get a lot of feedback. I don't know if it'll be all good, but it is what it is. Like I said, it's a conversation. That's nothing more, nothing less. Just conversation, and maybe get people thinking a little bit about some of the things that we talk about that crosses our minds.
Yeah. Well, you need to get ready and come down and go on a cat hunt sometime here before the winter.
As soon as you get back from the rock, we're gonna try to make it happen.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, we'll catch it.
All right.
Do you like to be outdoors like I do? If so, unlock the wilderness with Onyx Maps. It is your ultimate guide to exploring, hunting, and conquering the great outdoors. With detailed maps, real-time tracking, and exclusive access to public and private lands, Onyx Maps is your key to adventure. Discover the possibilities and never get lost again with Onyx. So subscribe today using the promo code K920, letter K, number 9, 20, and know where you stand.